everybody, it's the War Hipster here, coming at you with our first ever Lord of the Rings painting tutorial, and it's a big one. We are painting a tree. What? Tree? He is no tree, he is an Ent. So, we are painting the one himself, Mr. Treebeard, as well as Merry and Pippin. Now we've got Merry and Pippin here, and here. Yep, that was in the right order. That's Pippin, Merry's over there. Now, when we come to do Merry and Pippin, we're going to do them on these guys rather than the ones on here, but the techniques will be fundamentally the same across both. So I'll show you, I'll demonstrate them as we go along, but oh, there we go. But yes, anyway, without much further ado, we're going to jump in and start painting the Mighty Ent Treebeard. Now, I have primed him in Grey Seer, and the reason for this is that he has got a very, very kind of cold wooden bark according to his box art. If you look at it there, it is quite cool. So we've done it in Grey Seer, and the colour that we are making first and foremost is two parts Wyldwood, 1 part Black Templar, and then just a bit of contrast medium to improve the flow on our brush and also just kind of make it go a little bit further. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab that on our brush and we're going to start painting this all over his bark. So just pick a place to start. I'm going to start here on the leg, and here we go. So you'll see that colour comes out absolutely spot on. This kind of ancient weathered bark that Treebeard is. He's an old Ent. So we just want to go all over all of his bark, all of his wood, just like this. If you can, just avoid any kind of leafy or mossy growths. So we've got some down here on the foot, you can see. So you just want to avoid those, and we also want to avoid any of the leaves. But if you do get some of this on there, don't worry too much, because you can just neaten it back up with some Grey Seer afterwards. So this is going to take a little while. So have fun. I'll see you when we come back. And so with that done, our base coat on our bark is now all finished, and it looks already really, really awesome and cool. Just look at the, yeah, down there. It's just brilliant. So before we're going to do any more to that bark, and indeed pick out all of the kind of little growths and things, we are going to work on his beard, because that's, you know, the other major prominent feature of him. Now, as you can see, try not to be too nervous watching this. We've got 5 colours in front of us. We've got Creed Camo, Dark Angels Green, Wyldwood, Cygor Brown, and Aggaros Dunes. And the reason for this is we're about to get super messy, and it's going to be really awesome and fun, but this is the kind of thing that contrast was literally designed for. So what we want to do is we want to start kind of making a little bit of a patchy greeny style beard here. And as you can see just there's all sorts of different colors going on in there. So the reason we're not using any Black Templar here is we want this to be a little bit more warm. So starting off, I'm going to grab some Creed Camo, and we're going to start on his mustache. So with this Creed Camo, what we're going to do is we're just going to add a little bit of it there, and we're going to add a little bit of it up here, and we're going to add a little bit down here, grab a little bit more, and I'm going to add some there as well, just like that. Simple. Then I'm going to wash the brush, and then I'm going to grab some Aggaros Dunes. I'm going to add this in amongst it as well, just like that. We'll add a little bit more Aggaros Dunes just around there, a little bit around here as well, just like that. Wash the brush, and then we grab some Wyldwood. Whilst it's still wet, we're just going to add that all the way around like so. A little bit more Wyldwood. Make sure I get right in here. Get around the back as well. Just like that. See? Gives us this kind of lovely mix. Then lastly we take a little bit of Cygor Brown and just add that in the deepest areas where we want it. Like so. And then we basically just repeat that process all the way down. So we've got quite a large amount of leaves coming down here. So I'm going to start with these. So I'm using Dark Angel's Green here. I'm going to put those going down like this and like that. Got some more down here. Just like this. Just check all the way down. Got some more just down there at the bottom. So that's our Dark Angel's Green. I'm going to take some Creed Camo. And just next to it, just add a little bit of this. Going down these vines. Again, we're just sort of blending these colours together a little bit. Just add a little bit more Creed Camo in there like that. Wash the brush. Grab a bit of Aggaros Dunes. And similarly, just add it in to the two colours. Like so. Then we wash the brush one more time. And grab some Wyldwood. And we just plaster this on. Mixing the two together. Or mixing all of these paints together. And grab a little bit of Cygor Brown. Just add it in little patches here and there. So that. Just want to keep going like this. So you've got the beard how you like it. Don't worry about that snail. We'll get to it in a little bit. And so with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to go back to working on that bark, just for the time being. Don't worry if it's a little too kind of messy for your taste. We are going to be adding some highlights and stuff into that beard, but it looks pretty awesome to me so far. So we're going to be working on the bark, as I say. Now the colour we are using is Aggaros Dunes. And what we want to do is just take small amounts of this on our brush, and we'll just pick little areas within which to add a little bit of kind of yellowish warmth to our bark. So I'm going to add some here, just in his kind of elbow joint, and a little bit more down here as well. And I want to add a little bit of it kind of up here in the armpit, just a little bit down here as well. And this is just to give us like kind of some different tones in that bark, because you know trees aren't all just one color. This Aggaros Dunes works really nicely over the top of that Wyldwood and Black Templar mix that we've applied. So similarly, just add a little bit of it around here. Yeah, there's no real rhyme or reason to how I'm doing this. I'm just kind of doing it until I'm happy that I've got this extra tone in here. You can see it might look a little bit yellow initially, but once it dries, it kind of blends quite nicely into the scene. And with that Aggaros Dunes applied, we want to do a similar thing, but with some Creed Camo. You don't want to do as much of it, so add little bits of it here and there. Even add it over the top of where you've done some of that Aggaros Dunes. And with that done, what we then do is take a small amount of Cygor Brown. We want to just add this similarly to how we've just done the other two colours. We just want to be a little bit more careful with how much of this we're putting on, because we don't want loads, because it's very, very dark, as you can see here. So I'm just adding it there. And so with that done, we should have some really nice looking bark all the way over, just like that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work on the moss and the leaves, and the colours that we're going to be using are Militarum Green and Ork Flesh. And what we want to basically do is similar to what we have been doing, is kind of do a bit of blending and stuff. So the Militarum Green, I'm just going to start using that down here on the mossy growths on his foot. Just like this. And then I'm going to wash my brush, grab a small amount of Ork Flesh, and just add that in there as well. Like that. Similarly for the leaves, I'm just going to do it in reverse order this time. So I'm just going to grab some Ork Flesh. We've got quite a lot of them here. Just going to get that all over these bright bright green leaves. Do these ones as well. Try and get both sides. Like that. And then just quickly wash the brush and grab a little bit of Militarum Green. Just mix it in. Like so. And with that done, as you can see, I've neatened up that snail with some grey Seer, and I've also neatened up the various mushrooms that are around him, like here on his head and here on his foot. So what we're going to do is colour in those next, and the colour that we're going to be using for that is Nazdreg Yellow. Just give us that really kind of sort of dirty nature-esque tone. And with that done, what we now want to do is use some Screaming Skull. We want to use this to colour in his eyes. Just like that. And with that done, what we then want to do is we want to once again take some Nazdreg Yellow and we want to apply this over the top of that Screaming Skull. You don't want loads. Just enough to kind of stain it yellow and not kind of make it look too brown. Like so. And so with that done, what we now want to do is take some Black Templar. Not very much, just on the tip of our brush. We want to colour in his pupils. Just like that. And with that done, if you're feeling particularly adventurous, you can take a small dot of Corax White and you can just place it off to one side in the pupil. Just like that, just to give it that little bit of shine. So with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to focus on that rock, and the colour that we're going to use is Basilicanum Grey. We just want to take this a section at a time, just to try and get a nice smooth coat of the Basilicanum Grey all over our rock. I'm just going to start down here, just make sure I get it all over that section. Just going to run between the fingers as well. And so with that done, what we're now going to do is going to add a few highlights here and there. So the first place we're going to work on is all the leaves. And the colour that we're going to be using for this is Moot Green. And all we want to do is we just want to add little highlights on these leaves around the edges. Just like that. And with that done, what we now want to do is use a small amount of Phalanx Yellow and just run it along the outside of each of our mushrooms. Just like that. And next up we want to use some Rakarth Flesh. We want to use this to highlight some of these traces in his beard. Just picking out the little vines. Just like this. With that done, still sticking with the Rakarth Flesh, we're going to use a small dry brush and we're just going to very, very gently add a little dry brush of Rakarth Flesh over the bark. Now, you don't need to do this all over the bark, because again, we want that kind of variation in the colour of the wood. This is just enough to give it a little bit of summing. And with that done, what we then want to do is we want to, once again, with a little bit of Pallid Wych Flesh, just add a very, very gentle, very light dry brush just over the top of where we've done our Rakarth Flesh. But we're just being very, very careful here. You really won't need a lot of this. It's just enough to give it some small little areas of real wear and tear. And similarly, we want to use some Administratum Grey to dry brush our rock. Now this one can be quite a heavy dry brush because we want it to be kind of all scratched and, well, rock-like. Just be a little bit careful around our bark. And with that done, I'm just going to gently dry brush it with a little bit of Longbeard Grey. Much like we did with the bark. Very gently. And with that done, Treebeard is finished. So now we've just got the hobbits to do. So, as promised, we're going to pop Treebeard to one side, and we're now going to focus on painting each of the hobbits. But the techniques that we use on these are the same that we're going to be using on him as well. It's just a little bit easier to do it on these hobbits for the purposes of filming, because otherwise I have to hold it down here like this, and you know what I'm like. You'll end up not seeing half of the tutorial. So yes, we're going to work on the hobbits now. So back in a sec. So this one's Merry and this one's Pippin. But the first thing that we're going to do on both of our hobbits is we're going to paint in their trousers. The colour that we're going to use for that is Shyish Purple. And next up, we're going to use some Space Wolves Grey. I'm going to use this to paint in the cloaks and also Pippin's scarf. And next up on Merry, what we're going to do is going to use some Dark Angel's Green to colour in his coat. Now don't worry if it looks too vibrant at the moment, particularly on the cloak and the coats. We are going to do something in just a moment that will pull it all together. And similarly for Pippin, what we're going to do is going to use some Leviadon Blue to colour in his coat. And then next up for Merry, I'm going to use some Nazdreg Yellow once again to paint in his waistcoat. And so with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to use some Basilicanum Grey. Just move that back a little bit. Use that Basilicanum Grey again. And we're going to use this over the top of Merry's green coat. Like so. And we're also going to use this over the top of both Merry and Pippin's cloaks. Just like this. And next up, we're going to colour in Pippin's shirt with some Apothecary White. Just like that. And next up, we want to use a tiny amount of Ork Flesh, not very much at all, to colour in Merry's brooch. And next up, we want to use a tiny amount of Wyldwood. We want to use this to paint in Pippin's belt and braces. So with that done, both of our hobbits should be looking somewhat like this. Similarly up here on Treebeard himself. So what we're going to do, just before we do any highlights and such, we're actually just going to paint in the skin. We're just going to finish off all the base coats basically. So the colour that we're using is Guilliman Flesh. You just want to be very careful here because they've got very tiny little facial details. So we don't want to have loads on our brush as we do this. I'm still using a small layer brush, as I do normally. But just taking small amounts from the pot. And with that done, what I'm going to do is use some Cygor Brown. I'm going to use this to paint in Pippin's hair, but also both the Hobbit's foot hair. And next up, we're going to use some Aggaros Dunes to colour in Merry's hair. And next up, we want to use a little bit of Basilicanum Grey to colour in the rocks. Just like that. And next up, we're going to use a teeny amount of Black Templar to colour in the buttons on Merry's tunic, waistcoat. Can't remember what I've said. Can't remember what I've called it. And so with that done, all of the base coats are done on both of our hobbits. There's Merry and there's Pippin. And the same goes for Treebeard. I'll show you him in a second. So what we're going to do next, we're going to do some highlights. Now, helpfully, the hobbits are so small that actually we don't need to do full highlights. We just need to do spot highlights, and it's very effective. So what we're going to do is we're going to start on the cloaks, and the colour that we're going to be using is Administratum Grey. We just want to pick out little areas where we want the light to kind of glance off these cloaks. Just like this. And similarly on Merry's coat, we want to use some Warpstone Glow just to pick out little areas. Just like that. And similarly, we just want to use a really diddy amount of Phalanx Yellow just here on the crease. Like that. And with that done, what we then want to do is take some Flayed One Flesh. Just pick out the sharpest details. On his face, his hands, and his feet. And we want to do this on Pippin as well. And next up, we want to use a teeny dot of Screaming Skull on their eyeballs. just like that. And next up, we want to use a really tiny amount of Cygor Brown, just to add in a little bit of a pupil. For their eyes like that. So with that done, Merry is finished. We don't need to do the trousers because we want them to be nice and dark purple, and the Shyish Purple has done all of the work for us. So Merry's done. Now all we need to do is just finish off Pippin. And what we're going to do is we're just going to use some Russ Grey. We're going to use this much the same way we did with Merry. Just going to use it to add a few little spot highlights to his blue cloak, or coat, I should say. Just like that. And next up on Pippin, we're going to use some blue horror, just to very, very gently, very carefully add a few little spot highlights to his scarf. Just like that. And with that done, our hobbits are finished. And so is Treebeard. So all that's left to do is his base. Now I'm going to be using some Stirland Battlemire for this. So I'm just going to give that a quick shake, open that up, grab my texture spreader, and I'm just going to be starting putting Stirland Battlemire all over. Just like this. Now of course, you can do this however you like. Or you can follow along with me. And with that Stirland Battlemire applied, what we then want to do is we want to dry brush that base with some Tyrant Skull. And with that dry brush applied, I've added some tufts to the base, and so all that's left to do is paint in the rim, and the colour I'm going to be using for that is Corvus Black. And with that, Treebeard, Merry and Pippin twice over are now finished, and it was a hell of a lot of fun to do. The Lord of the Rings has a really special place in my heart, as does the little Middle-earth strategy battle game. It's one of the games of Warhammer that I really got into very, very much in a big way when I was a kid, and to see Treebeard rendered in plastic, I think for the first time, is wonderful, and they've just done such a special job of sculpting this iconic character from the films, and I hope I've done a special job of painting it for you. Well, all three of them, or technically 5. No, it's 3. It's an Ent and 2 hobbits twice over. I hope this helps you, and yeah, I just hope you're as pleased with the final result as I am. If you enjoyed this one and you'd like to support me further, like these legends on the screen, you can do so. Head to patreon.com/warhipster or head to ko-fi.com/warhipster. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all of that good stuff. And if you'd like to stay up to date, make sure to click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.